Hey there folks, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to give you guys my reasonings for why I'm not the biggest fan of the current Halloween timeline and why I prefer a different one to the current Blumhouse trilogy. And just to give a refresher for those who may not know, the current Halloween timeline consists only of Halloween 1978, Halloween 2018, Halloween Kills, and Halloween Ends. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright guys, so I only have a few reasons on why this particular timeline in this trilogy isn't what I prefer out of all the other Halloween movies, but I do want to get out of the way real quick that I think that these movies do deserve to be commended for the fact that they have a trilogy, a strong enough trilogy that was able to carry over the same actors, carry over the same cast and crew, Christopher Nelson, Michael being the same. The continuity between the three films is very strong, making them feel like a nice set of movies to watch, even though their overall story isn't the greatest. There's a lot of things that you can hold on to that make you feel like these are really, really good Halloween sequels and Halloween movies, and the fact that they pay homage to the first three Halloween movies. They pay homage to the second movie by showing flashbacks, and a lot of homage to the first movie and showing flashbacks that they created and actual flashbacks from the movie. They show they bring back actors in Halloween Kills that were in that original movie, Lindsay Wallace, Marion Chambers, and Sheriff Brackett. I don't know the names of the actors off the top of my head, so I apologize for that. But they showed a lot of respect to those early Halloween movies in the sense that they try to make everything feel as close to that movie as possible, even though I would say Michael himself is the one that feels the least like the original movie in terms of how he operates. He doesn't really stalk, he doesn't really keep to the shadows, that sort of thing. But everything surrounding these movies feels a lot like Halloween 1 and 2, in my opinion, and I think they do deserve to get appreciated for that fact, and the fact that they're really high quality Halloween movies, which is more than you can say about some of them. But that being said, I'm going to give you a few of my reasons on why I'm not the biggest fan of this timeline. First up, Halloween 2 being retconned. A lot of people have talked about this. I've heard people talk about this all the way back before 2018 came out. One of those people being Dave McRae, and yes, I watched Dave McRae, I watched Wham, the guys that we watched the movie, I watched Drum Dums, I watched these guys, so I do share a lot of the opinions from some of them, not all of their opinions, but I do share a lot of their opinions. I lean towards more of the Dave McRae side, in the sense that this is what I want to see in the movie, but I also lean in the way of the Wham guys, and I can enjoy a Halloween movie just to watch Michael fuck shit up, but I lean closer to what Dave McRae likes in the sense that that's what I want to see. With that being said, with Halloween 2 being retconned, I think that really weakens their story. And like I've said, I've heard people talk about this for the last few years now. Halloween 2 is very important on justifying the way that the town of Haddonfield acts towards Michael or reacts towards Michael, and also is very important in strengthening Laurie Strode's story and explaining why she would act a certain way over 40 years. I need to get a quick drink. But Halloween 2 really justifies Laurie's actions. It justifies the fact that she would train for Michael for 40 years. It justifies the fact that she would put the daughter through hell and strain that relationship in order to make sure that she and herself are safe from Michael. You eliminate Halloween 2 from this equation, and the events of Halloween 1978 by themselves do not justify the rest of the story that they tried to tell. In my opinion, it doesn't make sense for Laurie Strode to have trained to fight Michael for 40 years, trained to prepare for Michael for 40 years, based on a 10-minute chase scene from the original film. Now, granted, he does chase her, or he does stalk her throughout the day, but who's to say that Michael was ever going to walk across the house after he displayed all those bodies? Who's to say that that was going to happen? We don't know. You could say that it was, you could say that it wasn't. I've heard a lot of people say that Annie was the main focus of 1978, but trying to remove hypotheticals from the equation, just going based off the events of Halloween 1978 by themselves, Michael chased Laurie for like 10 minutes, and then he was stopped by Dr. Loomis. End of story. So their whole trilogy is based on this Michael versus Laurie story, which would be stronger if Halloween 2 was a part of the film. And then you're like, well, then people are like, well, Halloween 2 has the brother-sister story. Okay, well, fine. All right, folks, sorry about that. But people talk about the brother-sister storyline, and Halloween 2 creates that storyline, and that is a problem for this new trilogy. But like I said just a moment ago, what was the point of eliminating the brother-sister story arc and confusing a bunch of people? I understand that it wasn't a part of the original movie. I understand that, and I prefer that. But what was the point of disregarding the brother-sister storyline if you're going to focus on Laurie Strode in this new trilogy? What I would have done is I would have had 2018 focus around the events of a brand new group of kids, a brand new group of people that have nothing to do with Halloween 1978. That have nothing to do with those events, but maybe Laurie plays the Dr. Loomis character in the sense that maybe she's moved on to be a psychiatrist, or she's worked in the field of medicine in some type of way to try to better understand people like Michael, to try to understand what motivates them, that sort of thing. I think that would have been much more interesting, and I think it would have been much more appealing to Jamie Lee Curtis, at least that's what I think, to be able to play a different version of Laurie instead of playing the same old version of Laurie that's been running away from Michael all of these years. You can argue that age 40 is more of her chasing Michael, but still, she's not moved on. She hasn't moved on, which is my point. I think it would have been much cooler to see her play a character, a doctor-like character, to try to better understand people like Michael, and then the kids in this movie, or the people in this movie, could have looked at her as the Dr. Loomis type character and looked at her as a way to understand Michael or stop Michael, that sort of thing. But she doesn't need to be in the movie at all. If she's no longer connected to Michael, and you're solely going after the events of, or you're solely using the events of Halloween 1978, then Laurie does not need to be in this new trilogy. Laurie doesn't need to be in 2018. She doesn't have to have anything to do with it. Wash your hands of it. Move on. But she's in the movie because it sells tickets. So their story, they retconned Halloween 2 so they weren't trapped, but then they used Laurie in all three of these movies for nostalgic purposes and for marketing purposes, and being able to say that Jamie Lee Curtis is attached to the movie when she doesn't need to be. If Michael and Laurie are not brother and sister, when you've disregarded that, you brought her back to the sense of the original movie, then she does not need to be a part of it, because her story in 1978 isn't significant enough for her to be acting this way for 40 years. And then after the events of Kills, for her to be completely fine, for the most part, after just 4 years later, when you could arguably say that after Kills, she should be even more terrified because her daughter just died. Michael didn't get captured, he just vanished. He didn't get captured, he vanished. At least for the first 40 years, she knew where he was. So it would make more sense for her to be a normal person for that 40 years, and then maybe after Kills turn into that Sarah Connor type Laurie, where she's like, well, he just killed my daughter, and now he's just gone. We don't know where he is. He's not in jail. He's not in the Smith Grove Sanitarium. We have no idea where he went. That's where the Sarah Connor should have kicked in my opinion. But moving on from that just a little bit, and moving on to more of the city of Haddonfield, the town of Haddonfield, I would argue that eliminating Halloween 2 from the events of the equation make no sense for the town of Haddonfield, because if you pay close attention to Halloween Kills, the majority of the mobs started before people were even aware of the events of 2018, which, mind you, 2018 takes place on the same night as Halloween Kills. So a lot of these people aren't even aware of the killing spree that Michael's going on that night. So when the mob starts, it's largely focused on what Michael did in 1978, which, like I've said, the events of that movie by itself are not significant enough for the town to care 40 years later, at least in my opinion. I need another drink of water. Stay hydrated. But anyway, the town shouldn't be acting like this, in my opinion, and it's not, doesn't make sense. And of course you have your I don't know. Your, what do they call it? Your suspension of disbelief. Of course, that's a thing. But you're pushing it way too far in the sense that you're trying to get me to believe that this whole city, this whole town would care about Michael after 40 years when he killed 4 people in 1978. In my opinion, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It doesn't work. And I would just disregard it entirely. This whole story is just very thin in my opinion. And I will tell you right now that I happen to be an H2O fan, so I do have my biases. I think that the overall story of H2O is a stronger story for Laurie's character than the entire trilogy made by Blumhouse. Laurie has a consistent, strong arc in that movie. Not only does it have Halloween 2 to back it up, Halloween H2O has only 20 years. It's 20 years after the events of 1978. It has Halloween 2 to back it up. So for Laurie to act this way for 20 years makes her story stronger because she went through more on that night and it's been less time. So she has double the trauma and less time to heal. And in this movie, in H2O, she handles it with alcohol and therapy and things like that. And I think that's a much stronger story than her turning into Sarah Connor. Her turning into, let's kick some ass and let's ruin my daughter's life and put this strain on my family relationships because of something that happened 40 years ago that really wasn't such a big deal. Now, it is a big deal to escape death, but I would argue that most people after 40 years aren't going to have that much trauma, and especially the rest of town, the rest of Haddonfield. They're not going to care. Laurie should be largely okay after 40 years. She could still have nightmares of this and that, but she should largely be okay, and she should have been able to move on with her life for the most part. And like I said, it would make more sense for her to turn into a doctor, to try to understand these types of people, to try to help these types of people, to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. And instead of becoming a hermit-like person, turning her house into a trap and this and that, it doesn't work for me. H2O, I said it, I'm a bias, I have my biases. H2O is a stronger story in my opinion. Yes, it has its flaws. I understand the Scream aspect to it. I understand the masks changing. But the overall story of H2O, in my opinion, is stronger than this new trilogy. It's more compact in sort of the timeline. It feels much better to me. I don't attach Resurrection to my preferred timeline, but H2O, Laurie's arc in H2O feels very strong. It's very consistent. Through the whole movie, she's running from Michael, and then she says, no, I'm going to save my son. I'm going to save these people in this town, or in this school. I'm going to save these kids. I'm going to avenge my friends that were killed in Haddonfield. I'm going to avenge the people that were in the hospital. I'm going to stop this son of a bitch. I'm going to grab this axe. I'm going to walk through this school by myself with all the fucking darkness around it, and I'm going to yell that. Oh my god, I probably shouldn't have said that. But that's how I feel about it. It's just stronger. Yes, there's a lot of issues with H2O. Yes, the new trilogy feels more like the original Halloween movies. I understand that. But the overall story, the story is the most important aspect in my opinion. The new trilogy just doesn't really have it. It doesn't make sense. It tries to pull at your... It tries to get you to believe things that just really shouldn't work or really wouldn't take place. So that's my opinion on this trilogy. Like I said, I don't want anybody to think that I'm hating on these movies. I'm just a really big fan of H2O, and I prefer that much more than these movies, and they try to get you to believe things that I'm just not the biggest fan of. You can see that they have agendas in the movie, and some of you will understand what I'm talking about when I say that. Hopefully most of you. I do like the movies. I can watch them and enjoy them for the most part. I did like Halloween Ends. If you watched my review, I did appreciate that movie. I was able to understand and accept the story that they were willing to tell, so I liked that movie much more than other people did. Halloween Kills was the weakest for me, even though I can enjoy that movie for the most part as well. It's just a little bit cringy, and it just annoys me a little bit. But largely, I do appreciate these new 3 movies for the most part. I'm just not the biggest fan of them. I don't prefer them in my timeline. So with all of that being said, let me know down in the comments below what your guys' favorite timeline is, what your favorite Halloween movie is, whichever and whatever you want to tell me down in the comments. If you like the video, please like the video. If you want to subscribe, please do that as well. Notification bell, all that good stuff. But of course, until next time, true believers.